Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the Information Assurance Symposium for 2015. I hope you think that yesterday went as well as I think it went. We had great participation, great lineup of speakers, great tracks. Many of the tracks as I walked around were standing room only, so thank you very much for participating in that. A few quick announcements before we get started. Joseph Brule, if you're in the room, could you please go to the VIP registration desk? We have something that belongs to you. Let me remind you, please, no photographs or videotaping either of the general session or of the track sessions, please. We will again break today for lunch. I've been asked to remind you there is food obviously on this level on either side of the registration desks, but there's also a food court down on the second level, and we would ask that you hurry back for the track sessions. Finally, let me remind you again to please silence your cell phones. And without further ado, let's move right into our general session. I'm very pleased to announce that our next keynote speaker is Terry Halverson. He's the DoD Chief Information Officer, serving as the Principal Advisor to the Secretary of Defense on Information Management, Information Technology, and Information Assurance. He has a lot of other things in his portfolio as well, but we are particularly pleased to have him come and speak to us. Prior to his current position, he was the CIO for the Department of the Navy. Earlier in life, he was an Army intelligence officer and also served as the Deputy Commander of the Naval Network Warfare Command and then Navy Cyber Forces. It is a distinct pleasure for me to introduce Terry Halverson to the stage.
Good morning. So first I want to let you know we're testing a couple things today. So it was out in Silicon Valley a couple weeks ago, Kurt was with us, and we picked up some new tools. So for those of you who haven't silenced your cell phones or who are connected to a wireless device, we've got this new tool that's connected to a laser, and if you turn them on or haven't silenced off, you just disappear. It looks like it's going to work effectively. But if you're sitting next to someone who still has that phone, we've not got the targeting down quite right. So you might want to remind them that they've put you in jeopardy. I thought what I would do this morning is talk for about 15 minutes and then take your questions. I don't think it's any secret that cybersecurity, cyber basics, is a topic that is on everybody's mind. No secret, we have been spending some time in the government lately on a couple cyber-related incidents. Internationally, there have been cyber-related incidents, most of which stem from, frankly, a lack of attention to cyber basics and cyber discipline. It is not often that you can say always about anything. But I think, and you can talk to people here today that would confirm that, in every instance where we have had a cyber incident, it has either been caused by or certainly enhanced by our inability to complete cyber basics and cyber discipline actions. I don't think it's an understatement to say this is becoming just short of a crisis for us to get this better. What makes it hard is that in cyber, you really are talking in many cases about a binary decision. It gets hard to explain to people. You know, we'll do inspections, we'll do reviews, and you'll get somebody who comes in and says, hey, I got 95% on a particular topic, maybe patching. And you've got to tell them that that's not passing yet. Because if you've got 95, that means there's 5% vulnerability somewhere and someone will find them. So this is a hard game to play. I don't want anybody to think it's not because people are trying. It is a hard game to play, and it's a game that takes constant attention. You can't lack up on this. So what are we doing in conjunction with all our partners, which include NSA, Cybercom, DISA, all of the leadership in the DoD, certainly the Secretary, etc. We've embarked on a couple things. We have started a very concentrated cyber basics campaign that goes after the things you would think about. How do we do better patching? How do we control system administrator access? How do we enforce PKI? There is going to be a bill associated with that when we're done. So the other thing that we've got to look at is how do we do the trade space between what are other priorities, and there certainly are priorities, what are our biggest priorities. And right now I will tell you the biggest priorities are to close those cyber basic gaps. And we are really working hard to do that. But this has to become not just a DoD and government discussion. And I know there are industry and there's some international reps here. This has to be both a national and international discussion. We certainly in the US have to raise our cyber basics game. And that's going to take all the help from industry. And just like it cost us money, I get that that's going to cost industry some money. But here's what I think I can tell industry. The ROI balance has certainly shifted. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, if you had a cyber event on your bottom line sheet, it might have been better to absorb the event and not pay the cost for the security. I think we're way past that now. I think when you look at the cost to government or industry, if you have a cyber event, particularly the indirect cost is the follow-on business, the trust with your customers. I think that math becomes really simple to say it's cheaper now to do the investment in cyber basics and make sure that you're following them. We're also trying to change some of the ways we get at cyber basics. I'd be the first one to tell you that in DoD, the way we have been training cyber basics, particularly the annual events where everybody sits there, gets on the computer, and does their hour course with the full intent of just let me get that certificate. That's what you do. That is not an effective way to train. So we're going to change some of that. And I often just think people want to look at this. One of the things we're going to do with some of our basic IA is you will get random questions pop up on your screen now that says, here's the situation, and how's the answer to that? If you continue to answer those correctly, good. You don't keep getting, you don't have to go take the course. If, however, you don't answer those correctly 2 or 3 times, we'll send you a directed package of study, which I think is much more effective. I think that's something that everybody ought to be looking at doing. I think it makes a lot of sense. Here's the other thing, though, that we've got to get to in cyber basics, and I would tell you even in advanced cyber. This is where industry's got to help. The volume of data that we have to try to protect, the volume of data that it takes to analyze to get all of the security intelligence that we want is too high to do that, too much volume to do that completely with humans in all parts of the chain. We really have to get to where some of this basics, including the reaction, is automated. We are keenly interested in looking at the tools that help us do that. I'll tell you, the trip we took to Silicon Valley, there were 3 or 4 things that leaked out of us as things we've got to go test. But Silicon Valley does not have the corner on innovation. There's a lot of innovation going on East Coast. There's a lot of innovation going on right here in the DC area. So if you've got that innovation, please shoot us an email, let us know. Best way to do that is if you can put it in form of a business case that says, hey, here's why we think it works, here's what we've done, here's what we worked it through. We'll read it. It might not get done in a day. I do get consistent emails that say, hey, we sent you this business case on Monday. How come we haven't heard back on Wednesday? You probably aren't going to hear back for 3 or 4 weeks. But you will get back an answer at some point, and it could be an answer that says, come in and see us, it could be an answer that goes to somebody else, or it could be an answer that says, you need to do some more work. But we're interested in that. We have to partner with industry. And when I say partner with industry, this isn't just partnering with industry and selling us stuff. This is partnering with industry to exchange information, exchange tactics, exchange techniques, and frankly get to where we have a shared partnership culture about how we do cyber basics and cybersecurity. It has to be done that way. You know, it's a trite expression, you know, you say, well, this is a team sport. Well, this absolutely is a team sport. It cannot be done without the cooperation, mostly because of the point I made earlier. It has to be done near perfection or you have the vulnerability. The only way we can do that is partner with industry, other government, our foreign partners. Everybody's got to play in this for us to get it right, or we will not make the strides that we need to. And this is important for a couple reasons. There's the obvious reason, you know, national security, we're losing data. But here's a second reason that also impacts security and everything else. Right now, we're on the wrong side of the economic cyber model. People can cause us disruption for a lot less money than it causes us to have reaction. Well, that's money we've got to spend, and let's be real, there's not a lot of extra money rolling around. So if we can't fix that, we'll have to continue to spend money on cleanup other things that we would rather put in operational things, everything from upgrading weapon systems to actually advancing our state of cyber art. So this becomes very critical for us to get right. What else can we do? I think these events. The other thing I think we haven't done enough of is get the discussion moving across everybody about how important this is, and the fact that with some concentrated effort, I believe we can get to a cyber basics level. We need to have a national discussion. I've talked with Tony Scott, the federal CIO. For those of you who don't know Tony, it's fantastic that we have him as the federal CIO. He's come from Microsoft and industry. He gets what has to happen here. We're trying to talk about doing some partnerships at a larger level. We're talking about how we might do some reach out, both to industry and to, frankly, the nation as a whole. Internet is a great thing. Certainly has had wonderful positive outcomes. But it's like everything else that we have done in the past and will do in the future. There are some people who will use any environment like that to cause problems. It is not a completely harmless environment. And that's okay. Nothing really is a completely harmless environment. But just like when you're traveling and you take certain precautions when you're in certain parts of a city or maybe certain parts internationally, you got to do the same thing in the cyber world. And that changes, and that's okay. I mean, there are certain parts of the world you walk around and feel good. There's other parts of the world where you walk around you don't feel so good. You take more precautions. We've got to have that kind of flexible response inside the cyber environment. Because the one thing we can't do, you know, people tell me, well, we've got to make the place totally secure. That's never going to happen. We could do that. I mean, I've had this discussion with people who come in the board and they don't say, I can make the networks completely secure. I just turned them off. Now, that causes some minor problems, the rest of this stuff. But this is our business. Particularly in DOD, we frankly get paid to go to places that aren't safe. That's what we do. I mean, people don't like it when I say this, but we are frankly in the business of war. And in the cyber environment, there's a bit of war going on. So we've got to get our tactics, our protections, and understand those, certainly. But then there's a level that I think the entire nation, every consumer needs to recognize about when they go on the internet. So two things I want to also talk to you about that are a little bit related to that. There are two particular audiences that are extremely vulnerable to internet badness. Looking at the audience, some of you are close to getting into the one group. I just put my father on the internet. He is 79, did not grow up as a cyber guy. We got him a laptop, and teaching him the rules has been interesting. I now have a part-time job, and it's reconfiguring his laptop and his smartphone. But obviously there's a group of more senior people who are very vulnerable on the internet, and then there's your children. Average age of getting a cell phone, smartphone now, I think is 10.4 in the US. We need to make sure those two particular groups that you're doing everything we can as a group to educate them about what is the vulnerability. You want to go there, and I certainly want people on the internet, but we do owe it to them to educate them about what's going on. And I think that's a responsibility of everybody in this room. Everybody in some way has that issue probably going on, either with children, parents, other more mature friends. They tell me I can't say older anymore. It's not good. Though I try to remind them, if you're not getting older, that's probably bad. That means you've reached Generalissimo Franco's condition. For those of you old enough to remember Saturday Night Live, it has stabilized. Don't want to be there. We have to have a very robust discussion on this topic, and I hope, if nothing else, you will walk away today committed to having that discussion in all the environments that you're in about how do we improve cyber basics, how do we have a rational discussion. This is not about making the threat so big you don't go there. This is about having a rational, intelligent discussion about what can we do. It's knowing that when you get that email that you don't recognize, don't click on it. It's knowing to not just hit directly in the link, but to look underlying the link, make sure you retype it in so it's the right link and not a spoofed link. I mean, these are not hard things to do if you think about them, but you do have to think about it. Because the other thing I would say today is you're all enlisted. Everybody who came in today, whether you like it or not, you've just enlisted in the cyber warrior workforce. This is a national problem. It is not just a DoD problem. And those of you who spend time on the internet, you've got to be part of the force that help us. You have now become cyber warriors, whether you want it to or not. How do you help us get this done? Because it benefits all of us. And I don't think we think enough about the benefits either. There are economic benefits, societal benefits. You just keep going, medical benefits, all the things that the internet brings. We want to make sure that it's as secure an environment as possible, and secure enough that the risk is worth all the gain. That's the other thing we have to think about. What is the risk calculus involved in cyber basics and cyber hygiene? That's a hard problem. That's probably a more complicated formula than we've had in the past, but we can get there if we think about how to calculate the risk. Between money, what else you would lose, I think it's doable. And then how do you measure success? Now, this is the age-old problem of security. How do you measure what didn't happen? So I think there are actually ways now to do that. To how you think about what have you done. One of the things you can measure is, have you raised the cost of the threat to get into your systems? That's a big deal, because if you raise the threat high enough, the bar to get in, you've eliminated a whole bunch of players that no longer can play. You've made the game higher, and that benefits us when we can do that. I think I will shut up now. Kate has told me my time is up. What are your questions? Go right ahead. I think there are mics scattered around. And no question is off limits. I can't tell you who will win the World Series, who's going to win the NCAA basketball tournament. There's not much I can't tell you today.
I'm going to ask a cyber-related question, sir. Yeah, how about this one? So various industry authorities at talks I've been to lately have disagreed on the relative investment between like hardening and things early in the life cycle versus defending versus remediation and recovery. And I'd like to know your view on sort of where we should put the relative effort on those things.
So I think, again, I'll use a standard answer here, but I think I'll say it is going to have to be a layered defense. And depending on what you're defending against, there may be times when you want to put more effort in the outer boundary, inner boundary, packet searching, packet capturing. You've got to do that analysis. There is not going to be a single answer that says in every case, just harden your outer shell. That's not going to work. It has to be a balanced, layered approach, and you really need to look at what threats you're operating against to get to the right answer there. But in any case, it is a combination of layered defense using a suite of tools that cover that entire spectrum of security. But the other thing you have to be careful of here, and I think this is another case where if you're not using the right balance of approach, you overwhelm yourself with data, then you can't take any action. So you do have to balance what data you get in, what resources you have to take the action, particularly now until we can get more automated tools that will do some of the audit responses that we need to get to. Sir.
Sir, thank you very much for your talk today. In your cybersecurity basics, and this question isn't intended to lay blame on anyone, but we know our software is riddled with vulnerabilities. There's 25 programming errors that cause 90% of the exploited vulnerabilities. Is part of your cyber basics eliminating those errors so we have a fighting chance in our software to protect it?
So certainly it is. But I'm going to say this, and this is when I start getting in trouble. We're certainly doing that, but 95% of my software today is commercially bought. So while I have that problem, so do commercial developers. So one of the things that I do think it is time for us to stress, and there's lots of names for this. I call it safe code. You can call it clean coding, lots of terms. But it is time, and I will tell you that we are looking in the acquisition world with Frank Kendall, who's very supportive, of putting out some requirements in anything we buy now that has some standard, call them KSA, KPs, about you will meet these certain safe code practices. Have to do that. Thank you. Good question.
My name is Colleen Hinton. I work for the Department of State. For 30 years, I've followed all the rules. I don't click on links. I shred important papers, et cetera, et cetera. I want to speak as a federal worker. I have received notification from Blue Cross Blue Shield, IRS, and OPM that my PII has been stolen, and a second time with OPM because I'm currently undergoing a background check. I hear about the White House 30-day sprint. Are they chasing the horse that's already out of the barn?
No, I don't think they are. You know, should we have done some cyber basics better? Obviously, I think that's a pretty good statement, but you still have to get them done. So I don't think they're chasing, or we're chasing, the horse out of the barn. I think when you do cyber basics, certainly you're correcting the knowns, but you're also, part of that basics is setting an environment that makes it harder for anything new to come in too. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Sir, you mentioned cyber basics in your campaign.
Thank you.
Here I am, sorry. Cyber basics campaign and closing those cyber basics gaps. The Navy Service Labs is working on CyberSafe. Where do the service labs fall into the partnerships as part of a campaign in closing those cyber basic gaps?
The services, and not just the labs, the services are certainly a strong part. I mean, this is not, you know, where the DOD and NSA and cyber are doing cyber basics. This is a DOD plan approved by SecDef and DepSecDef that we are all working on, including all of the services. We met yesterday again with all of the service CIOs, DISA, everybody to take a look at the next phase of the campaign. We are now doing a cyber scorecard. And just for all of you who are in the DoD environment, just so you know where the scorecard goes, it goes directly from me to DSD to SecDef. That's the level of import that our leadership is putting on the cyber basics and our progress in that area. Now, I will say that in many areas, DoD is ahead of the government as a whole, but I'll also tell you we're not satisfied with that. So in some cases, you may, people say, well, we're in green here by the standards, and we said we don't care. Our goal is to get all of those up around 95 to 100%.
Sir, question. So if a young man or woman walked into a bank with the intent of stealing and robbing that bank, but found themselves ill-equipped to do so, based on that intent, they would be prosecuted. However, because of the cost and maybe the numbers of script kiddies that continue to try their skills out, we don't see that same level of prosecution. And so a lack of consequences builds motivation to continue, as well as adding to the noise floor. Can you speak a little bit to your thoughts on whose responsibility is it to deal with that between government, DoD, industry, and how we can get beyond that?
I can tell you what we do in DoD. We certainly provide any data that we have that would help prosecution to the right authorities, be they international or national. We are, however, not in the prosecution business. Within DoD, for our own insiders that perpetuate this, we have certainly upped our entire level of accountability at all levels. Part of getting cyber discipline within DoD is making sure that the entire chain of command understands there is an accountability. I do not think it's a stretch to compare where we want to get with cyber to where we are with weapons. It is, I mean, to me, it's pretty simple. I can cause more damage today as an individual doing damage in a cyber environment than I can probably with a single shot from a weapon. That's just a fact. So our goal, and we've actually called it, in some cases, we've got a memo out today that says, you know, electronic discharge. And discharge was absolutely a word of choice because it relates it to weapons. We are, within DoD, raising that whole accountability level, and that's, I'll leave my comments at what DoD is doing.
Sir, over here.
Yes.
To your right.
Gotcha, thank you.
You said my name is Christian, CIC, support the Navy down at Pax River. You said that we enlisted as cyber warriors. Now, I'm in the trenches, right? I would see myself as somebody who sits there waiting for somebody to tell me to charge, and I've been doing that for about 15 years now. I hear distant gunfire at best, right? So what I think is, rather than a warrior, I'm probably more like a neighborhood watchman. But there's nobody above us with any authority at all to tell us how we can respond should we ever face an attack. I mean, even Cybercom complained yesterday that, yeah, they get reports, but unless the forward deployed commanders take action, they have no jurisdiction. They can offer guidance at best. So if this is a war, rather than, you know, a low-level police action, where's the authority? Who can tell us what to do about things?
So let me make something clear. The authority to do cyber basics has been given, and actually the order to execute has been done. So, you know, if your environment doesn't have that, shoot me an email, and I'll make sure you get the direction that said you can execute the cyber basics today. There is nothing preventing anyone from doing that. The orders on that are clear, the memos are out, the CONOPS, the task orders have been delivered. So now, if you're talking about beyond cyber basics, doing something in the offensive space, that's a different story. That takes a different action, and that's not my realm. I am in the Bureau of Protection in IA, and those authorities are out there today to begin to execute. I would also recommend that if you're already doing some things, if you don't click on that link, if you report that there's a system not patched, if you see bad behavior by somebody, those things are already governed, and you have the authority to work on those.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Right over here, sir.
Left or right? Up middle. Got it.
Good morning. My name is James Hayes, and I've been doing this business since 1996, where I started my security career at NSA, and in my opinion, nothing has changed. Not a thing. We preached back when I moved to IAD about patching, configuring, and how like 85, 95% of your problems will go away if you do that. And you're saying the same thing today that was said 15 or so years ago. So I'm not very hopeful on the patching and configuring, because we as people, as a society, are undisciplined when it comes to that. Some of it is money, I would agree, but it's also having that inside the organizations and ingraining the organization that this must be done. And I don't know how we get there. I also like to follow up, though, with the comments you made about accountability. And my concern is that there is a lack of accountability, in the sense that a lot of risk-based decisions are being made today